Republicans have a huge case of Romnesia on their hands. Let's talk about Benghazi. I am sick to death of hearing about Benghazi. Simply put, House Republicans decided to cut embassy security. Paul Ryan points to it in the vice presidential debates that there were calls for security, but they were denied because there was no funding. A representative from Utah, I believe Chaffet or something like that, spoke with Soledad O'Brien and said he absolutely voted for those cuts and said that we're only talking about a dozen or two people. A dozen or two people can make the difference between what happened at Benghazi and whether or not there were protesters outside does not matter. What matters is 4 Americans are dead in the wake of this. And regardless of whether regardless of whether they were armed men or protesters outside, doesn't make a difference at the end of the day when you have 4 dead Americans on your hands. But also what happened how many embassy attacks happened under George W. Bush? How many dead Americans were under George W. Bush and the embassy attacks there? Not many people know, and I will definitely try to verify this, but I believe that there were at least 8 embassy bombings and 80 dead Americans, but of course, not one outraged Republican. Not one outraged Republican, including the maverick of the Senate himself, John McCain. But when we talk about this Romnesia, what else are we talking about? We're simply talking about the fact that House Republicans decided to cut funding for embassy security while the former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton said this could be disastrous. She warned them, and yet they went on with the cuts anyway, even though they restored $88 million to the embassy budget while working out a deal with the Senate, but that wasn't enough. Paul Ryan points out in the VP debates that they have a Marine detachment guarding the ambassador in France, but says, why don't we have one in Libya? Well, remember, you cut the budget. And your colleague, from Utah, I wonder if he's a senator or a House member, Chaffet or something like that, Chaffet, Chaffet, says that it wasn't such a big deal when speaking to Soledad O'Brien. But apparently you made it a big deal when you decided to have an investigation over this. When you decided to have an investigation over lying to the American people about whether or not there were protesters outside, and of course altering emails to make it seem like the Obama administration had in fact put emails out that were doctored by them, and then it blew up in your face big time when it was doctored by the very accusers. Now, there's a lot of cases of Romnesia, but I'm just going to talk about this Benghazi issue, but there are plenty. Why don't we talk about stimulus with Paul Ryan demanding some funds because it'll create jobs, but yet this is a bad program, but he wanted that stimulus money for his district. What about Marco Rubio and Paul Ryan not being able to go to school or finish school without government assistance, but yet slashing that? That is a big case of Romnesia hypocrisy right there. Also, Ted Cruz's father bribing his way from Cuba to America and then lecturing us about playing by the rules. But if anything, it's not just Republicans that have a bad case of Romnesia, but I gotta say, it's a lot easier to notice it because they make it so flippant. However, I am sure that there's a lot of cases of Democratic Romnesia too. And I'm going to find it. But let's be real. Benghazi, that whole thing is one bad case of Romnesia backfiring on the GOP. So, your Benghazi investigation, well, 2014, Obamacare recovers pre-existing conditions. See you, YouTube.